Alright, we're back at the shop with the 68 Cougar, and things are starting to come around. We've got the engine back from the engine builder. It's a 302. It's got the EnduraShine intake manifold. We got chrome valve covers, so chrome air cleaner. It's going to look like a little jewel when they open up that painted engine bay. And they ran it. They said it was like 350 horsepower. Then the rear axle come back from the shop, and you got different gears, and it has disc brake mounts on them. We took them off, you know, the rotors while we painted it, and then that's ready to go in, except underneath it's all rusty, so I got to get underneath there and clean that. Then we'll put that extend stuff on, prime it, paint it, and then he's gonna just use that rubberized undercoating underneath. But the trunk, all the rods has been repaired, and all the seams have been seam sealed. A lot of guys don't think seam sealing is that important, but you ask anybody that's had a car restored, and water always seems to leak inside the body. And then when you go to trace it back, it's usually like a little flap right here underneath the chrome and everything that's letting water sit, you know, in that little well there. It leaks down in, or it leaks behind the taillights. And you really got to be serious about seam sealing everything, because water just seems to get in, and then it just is a mess, and then you got to try tracking it down and finding out where that water's getting in.
Phoenix Engine.
Phoenix Engine built this. .352 horsepower, they claim.
We were just talking with the guys, and we were talking about the size of the engine, how much horsepower it could make. And I was telling them that back in 1957, a 283 Chevy with Rochester fuel injection made 283 horsepower. And they were really excited because it was the first time that they ever made a horsepower per cubic inch. So when somebody has a 302 Ford and they're saying it's making 350 horsepower, maybe because of the technology we have nowadays and the flowing of the ports, allowing more oxygen to get into the engine, the different cams that are available nowadays, they might have mustered up 350 horsepower, but it is a feat. Whenever, you know, if you just had 302 horsepower, it'd be a big number. And now it's 350. 350. As you can see right now, we got the ruddy brown primer on it, but first we ended up using the metal etch primer, and there's two ways of going about it. You can end up using Extend or any of them rust reformers or something like that, that if you've got fuzzy rust or you knock down the scale and everything, if you have that down, don't even bother trying to use the metal etch primer, because it'll just wrinkle it all up. But when you use the metal etch primer, that's just to get the bite in on metal that's not, you know, really ready for paint. When you're doing a car body, you got rid of all the rust. So after you put down the metal etch primer, then you put down regular primer. You know, it's a cellulose primer. Then you scuff that down, and then you're ready for regular paint. This is that stuff that is called that rust reformer, and we sprayed that on first after we scraped all the rust and redid the floor pans. And now we're going to still finish priming it with the primer, brown primer. Whatever you're going to be doing, you want it all to be the same so that the paint job doesn't look blotchy from one area to the other. You want to use gray primer in one place, black primer in the other, brown in another place. But these are places that really don't even matter. It's all going to be covered up. But usually if you're doing any other kind of body work, you'd want to have all the same kind of base. Then they'll go over it with a sealer, or first sealer and then the high build primer, and they block it all out and then they pin it. This is just the original 8-inch Ford rear end. He thought he was going to save up and buy a 9-inch, but it all starts to get to be pretty expensive. And for the amount of horsepower that he's got, and it's automatic, they figured the 8-inch would be strong enough. And he's got 373 gears, and he just wanted a posi units because you just have one wheel spinning. That looks pretty lame. And he wanted to stop decently, so he had these brackets put on here. When you go to the disc brake conversion, instead of having the brake drum and all that excessive weight that wears away and has to be adjusted continuously, you go with this thing, and once you have the rotor on here, if I had a lug nut on here tight, you'd see that this caliper just has these brake pads in here, and this is like a cable operated emergency brake that pushes on the back of this one shoe. But you have to have this thing centered up so that it rides through here freely. If you had this offset one way or the other, it would be dragging on one side and wear one brake shoe out, and the other one wouldn't be, you wouldn't get good braking. So there's these spacers that you have to put in there and shim it up until you get this thing sitting perfectly centered.